But now let's get on with the show. Marcia Douglas is joining us from Colorado, born in the UK, grew up in Kingston, Jamaica, the author of novels, poems, and essays, and the recipient of awards and fellowships from Creative Capital, the National Endowment for the Arts, rest in peace, the Whiting Foundation, and a UK Poetry Book Society recommendation. She is a college professor of distinction at the University of Colorado Boulder, and joining her in conversation tonight is poet and author Ken Chen. And we will end the event with music from Keisha Martin. So let's please give Marcia and Ken a warm welcome.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming out. And I want to also thank New Directions, the publisher of this book, the Jamaica Kollection of the Shante Dream Arkive. I'd also like to thank Creative Capital. This is my Creative Capital project premiere. I would also like to thank the Whiting Foundation and friends and family. I see lots of different parts of myself out there. So I am going to, just by way of introduction before I read a little bit from the book, this book has multiple strands and storylines. And a lot of the storylines, I would say they all have to do with something which has been lost. I'm going to read from a storyline called Atlantic Mysterium. And this storyline follows a woman in the hull of a ship across the Middle Passage. The name of the ship, you might be familiar with it, is the Henrietta Marie. The Henrietta Marie left West Africa in late 1699, and it landed in Port Royal, Jamaica in May 1700. So this month, May, marks the 325th anniversary of the Henrietta Marie docking in Port Royal, Jamaica. After it left Port Royal, it wrecked, and it was not rediscovered until the 1980s. So this storyline follows a character in that ship as she crosses the Middle Passage. So here we go. The bell of the Henrietta Marie was found in 1983 and is the property of a Florida museum. The cough, on the other hand, exists only in the Shante archive. As you feel into the sound, you might experience a scratchiness in your throat. Don't be alarmed. It belonged to a woman in the hull of the ship who coughed each time she heard the bell. The bell rang every 30 minutes, a haunting, foggy, D5 sound. The captain kept time, but the woman kept memory. Each time the bell rang, she coughed to remember herself. She was squeezed tight between two others, one of them pregnant and vomit, the other a girl child who cried. Cough, also iwa, also iko, also owara, also kosuk, also ketiketo, also. In the journey from Calabar to Port Royal, the bell of the Henrietta Marie rang approximately 3,840 times, and a Shante woman coughed 3,206 times, each a remembrance. A small cough to remember self and name. Ajua, or to remember her mother's name, or her mother's mother name, to remember the forest she loved to walk in, and a certain tree in the forest, and a certain fruit on the tree, and a certain seed in the fruit, to remember the river she washed herself in, and certain fish in the river, and certain bones in the fish, to remember the sky, and certain stars in the sky, and a certain hum in the stars. The 3,206 coughs have been retrieved, sieved from whale ball, passage cuss, ship phlegm, whip shout, sea wheeze, horse neigh, and baby cry. Cough, also iwa, also iko, also owara, also kosuk, also ketiketo, also. On the passage from Calabar to Port Royal, Ajua recalls her name 542 times. Rotten feces, sick heave, and parched throat fill the hull. The baby in the woman's belly beside her is too weak to kick. It waits, fetal and quiet. Remembrance of name is an act of will. In brief fits of Atlantic fever sleep, a Shanty woman discerns swarms of anchovies swirling open-mouthed in the sea, seaweed abloom and free. A curious sea dog follows alongside the ship. It swims the length of the vessel, notes the trepidation therein, takes one look at a Shanty woman's eyes, and swims away. Cough, also iwa, also iko, also owara, also kosuk, also ketiketo, also. The sea rocks the ship, and belly woman vomits against Ajua's neck, and the bell rings, and a Shanty woman coughs, and the girl child next to her speaks in an unknown tongue. Up on the deck, a bird hitches a ride, exhausted from flight. Ship sails brace rain and squall. There are rats on board, and 5 barking dogs, and a horse strung up in a sling. The people bawl and call. They cuss in every language. And too, they pray. Someone dreaming in the future hears. Someone dancing in the past hears too. I'm here, the future ones say. I won't forget you. Cuss louder, the ancestors say. We are dancing you into existence. Adjua hears a horse through the din. It dreams of galloping the Atlantic in a herd 1,000 strong. Flying fish and eel and marlin and sargasso weed uprising beneath their hooves. Cough, also Iwa, also Iko, also Owara, also Kosuk, also Ketiketo, also. The bell rings at Port Royal, and Adjua coughs number 3,206. This one to wake the baby, which still breathes, a descendant calling its name. They shuffle them up to the deck, the 191 who remain. A Shante woman's knees are weak, her legs shake, her head spins, but there is air. Yes, there is air. Someone slaps her cheeks, pours water over her head. Later, they line them up, the 191 in rows on the sandy beach. Hermit crabs scurry their feet. Iguanas watch, curious from a distance. And a wind from the past moves upon a Shante woman's left, and a wind from the yet to come moves upon her right, and she stands and holds her head and sets her face, all roots and motherland strong, and does not fall. Atlantic Mysterium, or Azure, Cerulean, Indigo, Sapphire, Cobalt, New Moon Blue. Azure, Cerulean, Indigo Ink, Sapphire, Cobalt, New Moon Blue. Azure, Cerulean, Indigo, Sapphire, Cobalt, New Moon Drinks Box. Azure, Cerulean, Indigo, Sapphire, Cobalt, New Moon Blue. Azure, Cerulean, Indigo, Sapphire, Cobalt, Periwinkle, Blue. Azure, Cerulean, Indigo Ink, Sapphire, Cobalt, Bottle Glass. It should come as no surprise that the bell of the Henrietta Marie reappeared at sea bottom centuries later, 1983. Shante woman had a way about her. Cerulean, Indigo, Sapphire, Cobalt, New Moon, Soda Can, Azure, Cerulean, Indigo, Sapphire, Cobalt, New Moon, Blue. Azure, Cerulean, Indigo, Sapphire, Scandal Bag. Azure, Cerulean, Indigo, Sapphire, Cobalt, New Moon, Blue. Thank you.
Let's all give Marcia one more round of applause for that beautiful reading. I want to thank all of you for coming tonight and thank the Center for Fiction. Incidentally, I come here every Tuesday to do homework with my daughter before she goes to Mark Morris. But it's also a good reminder that, as you probably know, the NEA is being defunded. So it's a good time to donate to your favorite arts nonprofit of any kind. But how are you all doing tonight? Good. So your book is so spontaneous and original and playful and does so many different things. And I guess I kind of want to ask you, how did you start thinking about this book and where did all those pieces come from? And maybe to compare it to your previous book, which is also original and spontaneous and playful and kind of multimedia, The Marvellous Equations of the Dread. I felt like that book was kind of, in some ways, it's about Bob Marley haunting Kingston, and in some ways, it's kind of about the bros of Pan-Africanism, Haile Selassie, Marcus Garvey. And this book, you're explicitly trying to do what you call herstory, and to give names or to mark the graves of what you call the unnamed women geniuses, whose graves are not marked. So there is an explicit kind of feminist mission of recovering these stories from the archive, like the character in the piece you just read. But the pieces are very disparate too, in that you have different characters from different times, different places, different mediums. There's poetry, there's drawings of seeds, there's Zora Neale Hurston. We're going to talk about all of this. There's even sea monkeys. So how did you think of all these pieces and how did you collect them?
Different parts of my crazy brain. But okay, so I began with a seed, as with the Marvellous Equations of the Dread. If I'm to go back to that book, since you mentioned it, for that book, the seed was Bob Marley's ring that he supposedly got from Selassie, and which he supposedly was buried with, but that became a contentious thing. And so my writerly brain began to wonder about that. However, with that book, it ended up being less about the ring, or as Bob would say, less about material things and more about spiritual or mystical things. And something similar happened with this book too, which is to say that I began with Zora Neale Hurston, her camera, which she lost in Jamaica in the 1930s. She went to Jamaica on a Guggenheim Fellowship, and she had her Kodak, and she went hunting for wild hogs with the Maroons. And while,
Amazing.
yeah, something Zora would do, right? And while hunting for the wild hog, she lost her Kodak. And so I began to imagine what maybe could have happened if somebody found that camera and developed the pictures. What would be in those pictures? So that was a seed for this book. And you'll see that both books have something in common. They're about something which is lost. And as with the Marvellous Equations, with this book, it ended up being less actually about Hurston's photos, even though it's a through thread, and more about what it means to lose something. And so Hurston lost her camera and the photos. And the photos are woven into the text. However, the text is also informed by the things which we lose in general. So whether it's Hurston's photos or whether it's the shoreline, which we're losing, the book narrates Hellshire, the loss of the Hellshire shoreline, or whether it's people who we lose as well, home, identity. It's about loss, and it's about the surprising ways in which we find those things, the places that they turned up, or the unexpected ways in which those things resurface, such as the bell of the Henrietta Marie, which centuries later turns up at the bottom of the sea.
And you have another scene where there's a character who is maroon or a fugitive and is running away from his master, and then he jumps, but then he kind of lands in the present, or something kind of. It's hard to explain, but in a way, kind of similar to how you're reading, where in the passage in Atlantic Mysterium of
Yeah.
like the people in the future can hear the people
Right.
in the past, and so Zora Neale Hurston appears in the book. You don't immediately know it's her. she's a bit of a distanced character as Miss Z. And I think what's interesting is there is lost and then there's found, but there's also these degrees of distance and closeness that are kind of delicate sometimes. And with her, like when you think about colonialism in the archive, usually think of British bureaucrats with their survey or the ledger that records the insurance, where then you can work backwards and find the names of the enslaved people. But here it's interesting because it's Zora Neale Hurston herself as the person who comes, and she's African American as opposed to exactly Jamaican. She's inside and out. She's the one documenting with her camera. And then, so it's a kind of thing where it's like she's making an archive,
Right.
but she's also kind of making a different archive.
Right.
And she's the same but different.
Right.
I think we talked about this once, and you said, I think her camera is haunted. So how did you develop her as a character? I can imagine you didn't want to make her this larger than life person, right?
Right. And she's not the center of the book.
Yeah.
She ignites the book, is what it is. And there's something of her camera which is distant, this distant camera eye, camera lens. So she's less a part of the fabric of the book, but something, she's a character who initiates and sets the story in motion, you might say.
And I feel like a lot of the center of the book is about running away from things.
Yes.
And whether you want to or you don't, whether you want to or you don't want to, and you might be running away from something bad or running to something good. And W.B. Du Bois famously writes in Black Reconstruction that everyone thinks the Union won the Civil War, but it was actually all the Black workers running away. They won the Civil War. And Jamaica is famously the site of the Maroon counter zones, counter-colonial zones. And so we have certain characters who are running away from, the experience of enslavement. But I feel like at the center of the book is our modern parallel to that, which is the experience of migration, running away from the colonial zone, being in the US, running away from ICE or police officers or your mean boss or landlord. And so we have two characters who are literally on the run and are kind of in modes of transportation the whole time. One of them is an undocumented migrant who's only called 23A, which is the name of her seat on a plane. So even her name is about transportation. And the other one is a woman named Yolanda who has memories of crossing the Rio Grande. So how did you arrive on these two characters? Did you feel like migration would be what Shailja Patel calls migritude? Do you feel like this would be at the center of the book? Obviously, it makes it very timely.
Right. The other through thread is migration and fugitivity.
Yes.
And I'm interested in human migration, but also animal migration, botanical migration. All of these things are actually intertwined. So the character you mentioned, 20A, who's on the bus, on the Greyhound bus, running from the government, is also longing, for instance, for a number 11 mango. And the number 11 mango has its own migration story as well. And those of you out there who are from Jamaica, I'm talking about with the number 11 mango. The story of the number 11 is that, in the official story, I should say, is that back in the 1700s, maybe 1782, there was this British ship, the Flora, and Captain Marshall, who intercepted a French ship heading to Haiti. The French ship had this bounty of plants, including mangoes. They seized the bounty. All of the plants were numbered. And the mangoes were all numbered. One was number 11, and that number stuck. And until now, it's called number 11. And so there's a migration story of that mango. So that's the official story of how mango first came to Jamaica. However, there are records of other sorts of records of mango existing in Jamaica prior to Captain Flora's ship, in various journals and other records, even maroon records as well. And so this is where my book comes in, sort of filling in the dots as to how did the mango really get here? When did it get here and how? This is where imagination comes in. So there are all these different levels of migration. So there's a girl on the bus, there's also the mango. There are birds which migrate as well, things which get lost and end up in different sorts of places.
So the book, in a way, it is a kind of like a tribute to the flora and fauna of Jamaica. And I like, as you say, you know, there's number 11 mango, there's the Jamaican swallowtail butterfly, there's wild boars. I thought about how, you know, one of these foundational mythic moments in abolitionist history is in Haiti. The revolution is commenced by in Boa Keman, where the duty bookman and Cecile Fatiman like sacrifice a pig. But your book is almost like from the pig's point of view, like the Caribbean history from the point of view of the animal, you know. And so if you haven't read the book, there are all these pictures of seeds with footnotes that detail, you know, like what is the origin of cannabis, or what is the origin of the number 11 mango, or how did dandelions come? And they're kind of interesting riffs where they're not about necessarily romanticizing nature. It's not about I'm natural, you're not natural. It's not nationalistic about the motherland. There's something playful and interesting going on, and it is about migration. I mean, I thought about my wife, Yumna Shlala, is actually a visual artist and a writer, and she did this project where she interviewed botanists in the Brooklyn Botanical Garden who said that trees are migrating actually because of climate change. It's so warm that they actually are moving, and their seeds are moving to areas where they can survive. And you were saying that both books began with a seed, but with this book, literally, how did you start with the seeds? Like, did you always know that there was going to be number 11 mango in the book?
I didn't know that there would be number 11 mango in the book. But you know, that's the interesting thing about the writing process is that the story surprises you, and so do the characters surprise you as well. And so I don't plot out my books from beginning to end. I take the journey with my characters. So the actual process of writing the book is also a journey of movement too. And sometimes you end up in a surprising place.
And I feel like we're really on a very literal journey on this Greyhound bus across the country with our heroine, 20A, and with Yolanda. And I feel like we get to know those characters better as the story commences. And as you say, it's a story of fugitivity. One character says, how can I trust you? And the other says, because I'm a fugitive.
Right.
And so how did you get to know these characters? Because I feel like we're also seeing the two of them get to know each other while also knowing that they could only meet in this situation of escape.
How did I get to know those characters?
Yeah, I guess so.
Well, part of getting to know 20A is because I used to be an undocumented immigrant. I'm now a US citizen, but I actually lived something of a similar story. So I understand that character. It's fiction, but I understand 20A as a character. And when I first came to the US, I actually sat in seat 20D. And she too sits in seat 20D, but there's an empty seat next to her, and she moves over to 20A. But I sat in seat 20D. I don't think I moved over to seat 20A, but I had her move over to seat 20A because I felt that sounded better than seat 20D.
Then you could be friends, like you're sitting next to each other.
Right, yeah. So that there's a little bit of her character which I'm kindred to. You know, I understand what it is to have that experience. So that's how I arrived at her. Yolanda is a little bit of me too. She's nerdy. And she collects facts and details. And so I understand how Yolanda's brain works too.
A lot of the book is about dreaming.
Yeah.
And if you haven't read it, there are even characters who kind of astrally project and go to a dream gate where there's a giant kind of Rasta head, and they can walk along the dreads to go to different kind of realities. And dreaming is really central to your work, I feel like. And I was thinking about a time when I was interviewing the poet M. Norbese Philip, who was saying, you know, you always think of dream and reality are as different things. But before the event, she was saying, I was watching the famous MLK speech and thinking, what does it mean when he says, I have a dream? Like now we can't really understand it because it almost feels like a cliche or something from a history book. But something about dreaming that's very different than reality. It's almost like he is being a surrealist, you know? And with your book, there's a way where dreaming is a way to access, you know, these people we could never meet, like the woman in Atlantic Mysterium, right? And it's a way for certain characters to make contact that they could never meet because they're in different historical realities, time periods, political situations. And what is remarkable about Yolanda is she cannot dream.
Right.
And what does that mean? Why is dreaming important? What does she lose from not dreaming?
Dreaming is important because the dream space is an archival space. In the imagination of this book, dreams and imagination are both archival spaces. So, you know, one way in which I like to explain it, when my mother passed away, I wondered, where can I find her? She was in my memories. But she was also in my dreams. She would come to me in my dreams, and I would go to bed intentionally thinking, I'm going to dream about mom tonight. She was also, or I should say, she is also in my imagination, right? So these became spaces. And in the book, regardless of whether we're talking about somebody who has passed away or some gap in history, the book looks to those two spaces, dream and imagination, as very potent spaces. The way that I describe it in the book is that, you know, dream and imagination, you know, it's like maybe somebody who you don't necessarily value, right? And maybe not somebody that you listen to or pay attention to and you brush aside, but who you should. And it means to recover something of what is urgent and valuable and potent in those spaces.
In the dream.
In the dream.
That person has agency. Like, you need to listen to them.
Right, right. You know, we think of the archive in this, in traditional sorts of ways, right?
As static and institutional.
Right, exactly. But what this book means to suggest is that the archive also extends into more ethereal spaces as well, you know, which are equally potent, maybe less valued, but there's some treasures there in dream and in imagination. There is nation in imagination.
Is that good or bad?
That's good.
Well, obviously your writing is very influenced by music. Well, I wanted to say, I feel like if any of you have had someone in your life who's passed away, I feel like we've all experienced this.
Right.
I feel like immediately after someone passes away, you dream about them. They visit you, and maybe they go somewhere else, but that is what happens.
Right. Yeah, and you know, I'm not just talking about people who pass away.
Yeah.
You know, in general, you're a creator too, and a writer, and you've probably had this experience where you imagine something or something that you think you've imagined, but actually you realize that there's some kind of synergy, and that situation actually exists, or even that person exists, right? I don't know if you've ever had that experience, and maybe people might brush that off as coincidence, but there's actually something there. This happens to me time and time again. What I mean to say is that the imagination is power, right? And it's a space that you can intentionally tap into, just as you can tap into your dream space, and it's right up there with memory as well.
But imagination is different than dreaming.
It is different from dreaming. In the book, I think of them as two cousins who live on different shores.
So is it that imagination is different because in dreaming you're connecting to another person? What is the difference?
Well, I suppose the difference is that, well, we think of dreaming as something that happens when we go to sleep, right? Right. And it maybe imagination might have a tad more intention to it, perhaps, where you can maybe more intentionally imagine, even though you can intentionally dream as well. But they're both connected in that they are these alternate spaces, right? These alternate spaces which we have at our disposal. They're tools which we have. A book comes out of the imagination, and it ends up being something of a document, right? It imaginatively fills in the gaps of a certain story or a certain understanding of who we are or what we might become.
I think it's about time for us to take audience questions, though. I can also vamp until any person is broken out of their introversion. So clearly you're very influenced by music. And the first, do we have a mic floating around?
Hi, Marcia.
Hi, Fiona.
Clearly, you're very influenced by music. My question also refers to your previous novel, Marvellous Equations of the Dread. You may have answered this question in another space, in another time, but hearing you, first of all, noting the subtitle of the section from which you read, Movement of Jah People, and hearing about the portal inhabited by a Rasta man's head with dreadlocks that lead to alternate spaces. I'm wondering about the influence of Rastafari on your thought and in your writing. Yeah.
For this book, or just in general?
In general.
Right. Yeah, well, Rastafari is a space of free thinking, I feel. And the Rasta community, they're forerunners, trailblazers. You know, you can take what you want from Rastafari and leave the rest if you're not ready to embrace all of it. But there's something of that world view which has trailblazed a path, I feel, in terms of how we think about Black identity and how we think about our place in history as Jamaicans. It's also a space of a community of free thinkers out of which a lot of creativity has emerged as well. Music, visual arts. There are ways in which we can critique that community too, of course. However, it is a trailblazing space as well, you know, and something to pay attention to, I feel. So in my work, I am, you know, I'm not holding up Rastafari and romanticizing it in any sort of way. I don't mean to do that. But what I mean to do is to take a look at what is found there. I don't know if that answers your question. I didn't answer it in a music specific way.
No.
But one thing which has emerged from that community has been music.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening.
Hi.
My question is, are you a Rastafarian?
I am not. I do not identify as a Rasta person. However, what I would say that my answer is connected to what Ifiona asked, which is to say, with Rastafari, as with Buddhism, as with Christianity, I take from it what works for me and leaves the rest. Because I think from all of these different modalities, there's something which can be useful for us without needing to necessarily identify as such. Because there's a way in which many of us are actually all saying the same thing in different ways. And so that would be my answer to you.
Okay, last question. Have you ever sat with any of the Marleys, them?
Have I ever
Sat?
conversed with them?
Yeah.
No, I have not.
Oh, okay.
But but you know, when I wrote my book, I did converse with Bob in imagination.
Oh, the only reason why I asked, I happen to be part of that family
Okay.
as clients and
Nice.
do a lot of their business.
Okay.
And I appreciate the fact that you are clarifying a lot of what Rastafarian is and what it means and the diversity of all, not just one.
Okay.
So I thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
We have another question over here.
Well, I'm just going to self-identify as Marcia Douglas's brother. And also to say that I think there are many things that have been said which only make sense if you are Marcia Douglas's brother. Because we both grew up in a yard where there was a very iconic number 11 mango tree, and, waking up to the smell of number 11 among other mangoes in the kitchen in the morning when all the windows had not yet been opened was just like unforgettable, because, the aroma and the flavor of the number 11 is so distinctive.
Yes.
So it definitely, triggers my memory just even hearing the name. And also thinking about loss, because, needless to say that, we understand that and, what the passing of our mother meant. But my question more so is going back to the how it started, the ship coming across the Atlantic, the woman, and your reference to fugitivity and what fugitivity meant. So, we live in very stressful times, as did our foreparents or Afro indigenous foreparents. And, it's very hard to imagine, irrespective of how hard it is now, what life would have been for a fugitive who found themselves in Jamaica, much more a woman. Could you just speak to a little bit in terms of as you dedicated some time to visualize that in your imagination, what that meant, specifically more so in terms of what that could have meant in terms of healing spaces for joy among a woman who is a fugitive in Jamaica.
Right.
Feel free to imagine as you speak.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Let me make sure that I understand your question, Leo. What you're asking is, I think your question is about survival, right? How would a fugitive, a person such as the one I'm depicting here in the hull of the ship, forge out some joy and some survival, right? And I would say that one way in which such a person would do that, this character is remembering. She is she's making sure that she remembers her name, that she remembers who she is and where she came from and what she's connected to. And I think that it's in that sort of remembrance that we hold on to ourselves and that we stay grounded and anchored. Another thing that I would say is that and this connects to a project that you and I worked on, about Queen Nanny and connection to land and nature. And this book is very conscious of that. It's very conscious of environment and of its importance and the way in that which that grounds us too. That connection. Ken, you were observing that in the context of this book, nature is I forgot the way that you put it, but it made me want to articulate the fact that in the context of this book, humans share a certain oneness, that they're kindred with animals and plants. They're not above, they're not below. But they have a certain kinship.
We're all living species in
We're
your
all
book, but
species.
but animals are also created through history.
Right.
They're not pure living
Right,
species.
right.
We're all inside a history.
Right. And as such, we all have our migration stories, and we are all finding ways to survive, as the plants and animals are. I would say these two things.
We've got time for one more question and then we'll have some music.
I have a.
Don't be shy.
Why did the bell ring every 30 minutes?
Well, that's a good question, Charlie. The bell rang every 30 minutes because that was something of how the captain kept time. And it was something, I want to say that it was something of the protocol on ships of that sort, that the bell would ring every 30 minutes. And so I know that you like math. And so what I did in researching and writing this book is that I thought about how long it would take for a ship to get from West Africa to Port Royal, Jamaica, Calabar to Port Royal. It varied, depending on weather, all kinds of things. But I took something of an average and worked out how many times the bell might ring. So it is based on a certain calculation that I made in terms of how many times the bell rings in this book. And then I thought to myself, how many times might she cough? And maybe she wouldn't cough every single time, but I worked that out too. Because I do have something of a romance with numbers, but in a poetic way. Gearithmetics, as I call it, right? So, and so that's part of my obsession, how many times the bell rings, the number 11. And, the number 11 actually turns up in some other sorts of ways in the book as well, maybe obvious and not so obvious. So thank you for that question.
I wonder if we should be fugitives and take the one last question here.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for highlighting the best ever manga ever in the world, number 11. But I was wondering, as a writer, how do you resolve the tension that maybe it is a tension, maybe it's not, between the imagination and history, right? That you seem to have done a lot of research and be intrigued by the research, but there's the imagination, and sometimes research and history can bog you, right, and hold you to the ground while imagination wants you to fly. and both are different from memory, right? So
Right.
how do you work through those things in your process to not get bogged down with the history, for the history to really be something that buoys you up rather than brings you down?
Yeah. Well, I think that the history can release you into the imagination, is the way that I would put it. Maybe the history might be a certain foundation, and then you go on from there. You're unleashed into the imagination. Or maybe also, as I was suggesting earlier, there's a certain gap in the history. And so it's an invitation for you to imagine. I think that that happens in fiction quite a lot. You know, you imagine. You know, I like to tell this story of when I was writing the Marvellous Equations of the Dread. And I wrote about Halfway Tree, and I imagined a little boy there who is homeless and who lives in the park on the other side, which now is called Mandela, but I think maybe back in the imagination of that book, it was just called Halfway Tree Park, maybe many years ago. I imagined that that he slept in the park, and that there were these frogs there. Many years later, while after the book was finished, I'd just like to go to Halfway Tree sometimes and just look at the clock, even though the book was already finished. But I would just go there and just stand up. So this man saw me standing there, and he was a conductor for the bus, trying to hustle to get people to go on the bus, even though I didn't want a bus. And he said to me, "You look like a teacher." And then he started to talk to me, and he started to tell me his life story, that he used to be homeless and live in the park. And that back in those days, there were frogs, but now there are rats. And he also told me how he used to beg money from the schoolgirls. And then I thought to myself, oh, but I wrote about, I realized that I was talking to my character, Delroy, who I thought I had imagined. But it was this man. And then he said to me, I used to beg money from the school girls. And I remembered, oh, but in my story, Delroy also begs money from the schoolgirls. And then it occurs to me that I could have been one of those schoolgirls, because I was about the same age as that man. So maybe I was one of the Halfway Tree Holy Childhood schoolgirls that he was begging money from. So do you see how the imagination works? It's this sort of mystical thing. And I could give you many other examples too, where you even have to be careful about what you imagine. Because, because it's that kind of space, is what I mean to say. And maybe not everybody is ready to embrace that concept. But I think that once you take a dive into it and you dwell in it, it becomes even more potent, So, you have to kind of let go and allow it to happen. Thank you for that question.
So I think we're going to end soon, and we're going to have food. There's going to be music. But everyone, please buy the book, and let's give Marcia a big hand.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you both so much. Marcia and Ken are going to stay here, but right now, Keisha Martin's going to come on stage and sing for us. We're going to go off stage and listen, and then we'll invite you guys. Keisha will let you know when it's time to get up and get food.
You guys, this is such a beautiful evening, seeing everyone out. Let me see all the Caribbean people in the house. Anybody from Jamaica in here? Okay. Anybody from any other islands? Call them to island. Trinidad. What island? Trinidad. All right, Trinidad in the building. Jamaica in the building, any other islands? Haiti is in the building. Okay. Okay, so my first piece is crazy that the conversation brought up Bob Marley. So my first piece that I chose is a Bob Marley song, if you are familiar with it. Everybody's familiar with this particular song. So I hope you enjoy it. The next two songs after that, you guys can move about and go get your food, and if you feel a little sugar food, take care. I understand a little bit. Yeah. So just indulge me. Old pirates, yes, they run wide. Showed I to the merchant ships, minutes after they took I from the bottomless pit. But my head was made strong by the hands of the Almighty. We forward in this generation triumphantly. If you know it, sing it with me. So won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? That's all I ever ask. Redemption songs. Redemption songs. Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. Have no fear for atomic energy, 'cause none of them can stop the time. How long shall they kill our prophets while we stand aside and look? Some say it's just a part of it, but we got to fulfill the book. Sing it with me. So won't you help to sing? Come on, I want to hear you. These songs of freedom, that's all I ever ask. Redemption songs, redemption songs. Said that's all I ever ask. Redemption songs. Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. Have no fear for atomic energy, 'cause none of them can stop the time. How long shall they kill our prophets while we stand aside and look? Some say it's just a part of it, but we've got to fulfill the book. So won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? That's all I ever ask. Redemption songs. So when it was sweet, I'm going to put it in the big wine, I'm going to make something. I'm sorry, for those of you who did not understand me, I'm so sorry. I just spoke a little bit of patois. So, for those of you who would love to go and get something to eat, if you feel the need to shimmy a little bit, you're welcome to do so. For the next song, please, I would like to do Stay Away by Miss Phyllis Dillon. If you know it, you can sing with me. That is it. The rhythm. Yes, that one. Said I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. And I wouldn't put no one above you. No. Come on, let's go. Hey, said if you knew how much I love you, Say if you knew, come on, hey, how much I love you. Come on, hey, how much I need. You wouldn't say, oh, well. No. Remix, come on, hey, say to him how much that I love you. I wouldn't keep no one know about you. I will keep you right next to my heart and never let you go there. If you knew how much that I love you, I wouldn't put no one know about you. I will keep you right next to my heart and never let you go now. Cause if you knew how much I love you, how much I need, you wouldn't stay away. No, no, no. If you knew you were my one desire, you set my soul on fire, you wouldn't stay away. No, 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 no. Step, 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 uno de two step, where the Jamaica, where the Caribbean people, step, 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 step. No, 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 no. So if you knew, sing it with me. How much I love you. Sing it, come on. How much I need you. You wouldn't stay away. No. And if you knew you were my one desire, you set my soul on fire, you wouldn't stay away. You wouldn't stay away. So I want you to play the shit out of me, please. So these next songs is kind of like a medley of two of my favorite artists. Anybody know who Dennis Bronies? All right. Anybody know who Barry Simon is? All right, so we're going to vibes, right? We got Walla vibes? Who doesn't got Walla vibes? All right. Play the shit out for me, please. Should I have faith in you? Should I put my trust in you? Or should you let me down? Or should I turn around? Why should I think this way? Thinking that you're going away when there ain't nowhere to stay together anymore. Said, how could I ever go on living this way? Said, acting like a child so young and gay. You don't know what it means to be loved. I said, you don't know how it feels to be loved. Oh no. Oh no. No, 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 no. You don't know, no, 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 yeah. I gotta tell you things, no, no, I can't resist, no, yeah, whoa, yeah. Said, how could I ever go on living this way and acting like a child so young and gay? Tell me you don't know how it feels to be loved. I said you don't know what it means to be loved. Oh no. Give a little party, no. Oh no. No, 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 no. Ooh. I didn't know if Mr. Barry's for that day I went when I said. You know what he would say if he was here that was having? You know what he would say? Step aside now. Another man wants to take over. don't know what you got. Now it's time to lose her. Step aside now. Let me show you something about your woman. Who needs a tender touch, loving on you so much. So tell me, are you crazy? Leaving my soul alone, so lonely. Says she's a winner. So you better protect her. Mix me. So when you're feeling blue, don't know what to do. She will comfort you. She's a dream come true. She will be your friend when you think that it's the end. She's always around. Always around. Yeah, yeah. So step aside now. Step aside, step aside, step aside now. Yeah. All right. Ow. Thank you so very much. So the final song of the evening, I covered a bunch of songs, so you guys are wondering, oh, yeah, she's a cover artist. I am not. I have original music. So my final song is going to be one of my singles, Rocksteady, which is basically a popular song. That's what they call it. So it's called Rocksteady, and behind this song, it's a vibe. It's all about I literally had a vision about this song, and I went to the studio, wrote it, and put it out, and I mean, it speaks for itself. It's about a vibe. I don't want nobody to sit down. I can't say, oh, this is not that kind of performance. I don't need to forget about our seat. Because no one wants to dance, because I hope you dance, you know. You need enough to dance with me. So, okay, everybody get up, let's go, get you. Sweeten up your foot, you're going to kick off the shoes for the one, yeah? No one wants to put no office camp on them old school someday, yes, that's darling. All right, run the track for me, please, yes. Are you ready? Okay, hey, whoa, 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 hey, oh, yeah. Rock steady, baby, rock steady, rock steady, come on now, rock steady, yeah, yeah. Rock steady, baby, rock steady. Rock steady, come on now, rock steady. Can I talk to y'all for a minute? Said it's so when you video like new. You better fling on your dancing shoes. Bobby said stop, girl, I wrote you. Said Armstrong with the massive and cool. Bobby said boy, grab a girl and come. We are the rock till a morning come. So bartender, serve me a rum. We are gonna drink till the bar is come. So ladies got on the best dress, fellas got on the ladies' face. Come in, the band is playing that groove, and the dance floor ain't got room. Sing with me, rock steady, baby, rock steady, rock steady. Come on now, rock steady, yeah, yeah, rock steady, baby, rock steady. Rock steady, come on now, rock steady. I'm talking to my working people. Said we've been working all week, and we just wanna unwind. I'm gonna turn my phone off, forget my books, and free my mind. So it's the weekend, baby. Ain't got a care in the world. I'm gonna rock my head to this honky beat. I'm gonna move my feet. What? Say the lick and I can say, I'm riding on my baby. I don't care, don't judge me. Just rock it with me. Hey, rock steady, baby. Rock steady. Rock steady. Come on now. Rock steady. I want to hear y'all sing. Say rock, rock steady. Sing. Rock steady. Come on. Rock, rock steady. Rock steady. Come on now. Rock, rock steady. Rock steady. Yeah, rock steady. Oh, rock steady. Thank you so much. Appreciate that.